This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Paul Hansen. Thurley, Ruxton by Philip Verrill Mighels. Chapter 8. Wanted, a Discovery. The transformation was complete, the most absolute magical transformation one could possibly imagine. And still Thurley hardly believed it had come for more than one midnight hour. It seemed impossible for such a dream to assume substantiality. Its vanishment, like Cinderella's coach and steeds, would have seemed the natural incident when 12 solemn strokes should sound from some darkened tower. That first exciting dinner with Alice and the Major was already 2 days old, its impression embossed on Thurley's malleable mind as a bas-relief uplifted from her former plane of existence. But tonight, this first real occupancy of her wondrous cocoon, from which she was destined to emerge into new and startling loveliness, this was too magical for credence. Alice herself had brought her to the suite of rooms henceforth to be sacred to her uses. Alice herself had appointed 2 smart, deferential maids to attend to her slightest needs. Her old world had slunk away like smoky fog. Old labours, old apartments, old gowns and hats and shoes. There was nothing left to suggest her past attachments, save 2 or 3 trinkets of gold and her mother's diamond ring. She stood at last alone with her thoughts, robed in a faintly shimmering gossamer of night apparel, delightedly regarding her home. Her maids had prepared her for retirement, and left her in possession, mistress of her warmly glowing kingdom. Yet she dared not and could not experience a sense of ownership either in the walls and furnishings or in all the dainty finery, exquisite gowns, the costly furs and sparkling gems already secured and bestowed upon her as the mere first requisites of her wardrobe, new purchases which Alice had assured her were soon to be supplemented properly when modistes, tailors, and others of their ilk should have time to prepare things to order. A feeling of strangeness pervaded the thrills she underwent, and she once more explored her gilded bower by herself. From the splendid spaciousness and delicate perfections of her drawing-room, through her lofty blue and gold chamber and her wholly enchanting dressing-room, to the fairy grotto of the bath and bath, she moved with the lingering appreciation of a princess who, after long banishment, is once more restored to her own. She opened the wardrobes one by one and gazed at their treasures in joy. The jewels that gleamed from her golden casket were reflected brilliantly in the rapture of her eyes. All her old dreams of conquest of Manhattan had contained no such element as this. It had faded like the tawdry thing in the light of this dazzling reality. All the old resentments felt against Acton Gaylord and his sort, together with desire for swift retaliation, had gone with the grimy fog of former days. Exultation and pure girlish ecstasy, with love of all the lovelier phases of existence, possessed and thrilled her being. It was hers, this world of beauty. Perhaps for an hour she moved about the place, now sitting in the throne-like chair, now merely standing in the centre of the room to contemplate its charms. At last she pushed a button in the panelled wall, and the soft rose lights of her fairyland faded in their crystal spheres. A mellowed twilight crept through the windows westward, where they overlooked Fifth Avenue. She went there happily, and by habit ran up the shades. Below, the pavement dully reflected the scattered lights widely dotting out the long perspective. A hansom went by, the horse's hoofs musically clop-clopping as he trotted briskly toward the plaza. Across the way loomed the wall and the half-denuded trees of Central Park. Here and there a star-like lamp glowed steadily between dark masses of foliage, increasing the sense of peace. The sky was clear, and the constellations swung brilliantly across the firmament, lustrous with cosmic magnificence. But Thurley's eyes beheld again a man falling forward in the rain. She saw him presently seated by her side, and the pulse of a mighty motor shook her being. She wondered, and she wondered. At last, with a sigh of new-found rapture, she returned to the wholly intoxicating luxury of her couch. What a pity it seemed to waste a moment of a world so marvellous in sleep's effacing oblivion. Yet when she awakened by the morning light, the wonder was fresher than ever. She had barely entered the hallway of miracles to which, in the way of her kind, she would presently grow amazingly accustomed. Nevertheless, for the 2 or 3 days next succeeding, her emotions of bewilderment increased. Neither her mind nor her nature could grasp the full significance of Alice Van Kirk's prodigious wealth. She could not behold the prodigality of spending upon herself and avoid feeling staggered and appalled. Alice induced her gently, with skill and finesse of the utmost art, toward the nonchalance, poise, and deportment of those long accustomed to the favours of the gods. Her pupil was apt and pliant. Her natural grace, plus her exceptional powers of observation and intuition, rendered Thurley instantly amenable to the slightest desires and pressures of the woman now moulding her anew. That certain regal essence of her being, naturally inherent, flowered in exquisite charm. Graciousness claimed her for its own. Her beauty was heightened and refined. Over coachmen and footmen, who were assigned with her own particular carriages to her needs, she assumed a monarchical proprietorship that delighted their very souls. By every possible device of modesty and retirement, Alice conducted the schooling of her princess, as it were, behind the scenes. Not even Robley Stuyvesant was aware of his abettor's find. He had fretted, stormed, implored the fates and Alice to run amuck through drawing-rooms and the first of the season's functions, without, of course, so much as encountering a single person who had ever seen or heard of the girl he sought. Meantime, rumours that a princess of extraordinary beauty, wealth, and cleverness was actually adrift incognito in America, and had been credited with truth, despite the fact that all eager swelldom had vainly sought to find her out from somewhat vague descriptions. She was said to be blonde and brunette together, headstrong, entirely cosmopolitan, weary of Europe, inclined toward an American alliance, and the promised guest of some woman once met abroad. To Alice Van Kirk these stories came and met exceptionally cordial hospitality. Such excitement as her nature and spirit permitted increased in her being every hour. At the end of a week of Thurley's tuition, the well-known Van Kirk impatience chafed no longer, however, at the mere delay in presenting of her protégé, but instead at her own fastidiousness of choice in means whereby to promote the impending discovery to best advantage. The horse show was a week away, the opera nearly 2. Before the former and the metropolitan opening, Thurley should already be heralded, or much valued time would be lost. A veritable triumph at Madison Square was the premiere of Alice's demands of the situation. Such power would the victory bestow. She dared not jeopardize a structure built upon the frailty of this new experiment by undue haste, unwisdom, or self-started claims concerning Thurley. The cleverness of her intentions was worthy of her well-known ingenuity and clarity of vision. Hence the worry that possessed her day and night as she pummelled her wits to meet the crucial moment and event of launching Thurley forth upon a social, startled world that would think it instantly pierced her identity for itself. She thought and planned till she was nearly ill. In vain. Some hazy scheme of inviting Robley Stuyvesant to a motor ride in the park, and picking Thurley up at the spot where the young man's wrist had been broken, was the nearest approach she could possibly invent by way of something accidental. It met her requirements in romanticism, even perhaps too well. It lacked, however, in its powers for publicity. She dismissed it with the rest. Saturday morning arrived, a day more brilliant than the sunset hour of the day when Robley broke his wrist. Alice awoke in a fever induced by tossing and sleeplessness as she thought of the problem she must meet. There was no further time to be lost, and nothing had come to her assistance. Then Thurley, plus her helpful fate, brought it all to crystallization, unguessed by Alice at the time. "Oh, Alice," she said at breakfast, "what a gorgeous day! Could we order the horses for a gallop in the park?" Alice avidly welcomed the suggestion. "Why, yes, by all means, Thurley. Order yours for this afternoon. I'll ride like a cat on skates, you know, but I'd rather you went than not." "Oh," said Thurley, "I hoped we might go together." Alice smiled at her archly. "Even though you might perchance meet a motorist, disabled and forlorn? Fiddlesticks! Order your horse for 3, and James will trail behind." End of chapter 8.